Okay. Okay, we're back. We're going to start looking at scraping those metrics off of those Prometheus endpoints now that we've got Prometheus set up and able to scrape. And we're going to start with ThingWorx, of course. So just as a kind of a quick check, you can use a particular user that you have already logged in. You can create a Prometheus user that will be used just for the purposes of getting the metrics. So let's just kind of quickly have a look at that. Users, Prometheus. You can see I've got a Prometheus user. Shouldn't need to have them in any particular group, but I have added the Prometheus user here into the admin group just because it seems that it stopped working. This might be something that's new in one of the more recent versions of ThingWorx. So I've got my user, and then from here it's really just a different web address. So /ThingWorx/metrics. And you can see here that we've got all the metrics that are coming up here. Let's make them a little bit larger. Yeah, it's not so great too large, but basically there's a ton of metrics in here, and they're being exposed in. Let's look for something about a query. So yeah, this is kind of cool. There's not a whole lot of query services actually in the metrics, but this one is useful. You can see here value stream processing subsystem query named property history average execution time. You know, this one, if you're capturing and plotting this one on a graph, it's going to give you the overall average of query name property history. So that can be a really good indicator of how your application is performing based on some of these things. What else have we got in here? Persisted properties. Persistence provider, data table processing. So we've got some, a lot of settings in here. There are a lot of settings. Basically, you can see the Prometheus format. And Prometheus is just going to scrape this endpoint. It's going to read these, and it's going to interpret them and bring them into its time series database. So nothing we need to do here. This is all going to happen for us once we get Prometheus scraping here. In the previous session, we had a look at the configuration where I'm just pointing to this. We got basic authentication set up, and this is where we're using the Prometheus user and password. You will have to be conscious of the fact that if you're using SSO, you're not going to be able to log in with a normal username, so you might have to do something different. There's some strategies to do that. I haven't tried it yet, but using an app key, applying an app key to an URL parameter might be a good way to get around that. So we get this scraping in ThingWorx. I mean, what else can I say? What else can I say about that? Coming over to Grafana, once we've got those ThingWorx, I guess we can have a look at some of the metrics in over in here. We're going to have essentially some of those metrics. They're all going to start with ThingWorx because that's how ThingWorx does it. And you can see that we've got them in this nice list, as well as the type, if it's a counter, clustering, subsystem, counters, entity usage, total thing. So, we can kind of get a gauge of this. We can choose the different metrics that we want. And this is a metric, right? So this metric, it has queries beyond this. Frankly, I don't build the queries in here. Building the queries in Grafana is much more user-friendly. So if we come back over to Grafana, and we just kind of add a panel, add an empty panel, and then throw this into our Prometheus data source and our metrics browser. It's going to bring that up for us right away, and we can then just start to set things like the time range that we want, minimum steps, legend format, and we can start to do things. Here you can see that this is the legend name. This is coming in here, and we can start to do some things like, yeah. we can just put a total things. You'll see some examples in the graphs that I have already set up in the dashboards that are a little bit more complex than that can actually pull some of the labels out. So depending on where the metrics are scraped from, they're coming out of the labels, depending on the node that it's scraped off of. So that can be helpful for something like for the clustering subsystem. We've got the platform ID. Here I've only got a single instance, but if we are looking at a cluster, then we might have metrics that are coming from different ones. So for a lot of these, I believe if we look at the event process, you can see here that I've actually got submitted tasks as the start of the text, and then I've got platform ID here following this. So as you're looking at the graph, you would have 2 or 3 lines depending on how many nodes you have in your cluster. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go through how all of these graphs are set up. The resources are going to be provided. You can grab those in the link in the description here. And you can see that this is really looking at stuff like the increase of some of these counters over time between 2 intervals, so depending on what the intervals, and Prometheus is just taking care of this in its functions that it provides, and you can kind of go from there to build the types of reports that you want.